Fermented cacao versus cocoa. Which fights muscle loss? Over 60? You have been hearing that cacao is some kind of superfood for your muscles and heart. Well, I am here to tell you something that might shock you. Not all cacao is created equal. In fact, what you're probably buying at the grocery store might be robbing you of up to 80% of the health benefits you are paying for. Today, I'm going to show you the real difference between fermented cacao and regular cocoa, and which one actually works to protect your muscles, sharpen your memory, and keep your joints moving smoothly. Here is why this video exists. Coffee plus cacao has become the go-to morning ritual for millions of seniors. The energy boost, the muscle support, the improved circulation. It sounds perfect, right? But there is a hidden detail that no one talks about. Something that could mean the difference between actually getting stronger or just fooling yourself with expensive chocolate powder. And here is what I discovered after diving deep into the research. The secret is not just about cacao versus cocoa. It is about understanding a process that happens to every single cacao bean before it reaches your cup. A process that either unlocks incredible health benefits or destroys them completely. I am talking about fermentation, and by the end of this video, you will know exactly which type to choose and which brands actually deliver what they promise. The third thing I want to share is something most people get completely wrong, and it has to do with how your muscles actually use these compounds. But we will get to that in a moment. Let me start with something that might surprise you. Every single cacao bean that becomes chocolate, cocoa powder, or cacao powder goes through fermentation. That is not optional. It is how we get that rich, complex flavor instead of bitter, astringent seeds that taste like tree bark. But here is where it gets interesting, and where most people, including many health experts, miss the point entirely. The fermentation process is not what determines whether your cacao is healthy or not. It is what happens after fermentation that makes all the difference in the world. You see, traditional cacao processing takes those fermented beans and subjects them to high heat roasting, then something called alkalization. This makes the powder smoother, less bitter, and easier to mix into your morning coffee. Sounds good, right? Well, not so fast. This process, while making cocoa more palatable, destroys up to 80% of the beneficial compounds that could be protecting your muscles and brain. On the other hand, minimally processed fermented cacao powder keeps those compounds intact. The difference in your body is dramatic, and I'm about to show you exactly what that looks like. Let me walk you through what actually happens to cacao beans, because understanding this will help you make better choices at the store. But before we dive in, tell me in the comments what city and country you are watching from. If you want more tips, grab our ebook and turn your morning coffee into a fountain of youth. With 5 simple ingredients that fight muscle loss, joint pain, and fatigue after 60. After cacao pods are harvested, the beans are scooped out and placed in wooden boxes or banana leaves for 5 to 7 days. During this time, naturally occurring yeasts and bacteria break down the pulp surrounding the beans. This fermentation process develops the complex flavors we associate with chocolate and begins to unlock compounds called flavonoids and polyphenols. Think of it like making sourdough bread. The fermentation does not just change the taste, it creates new beneficial compounds and makes others more available to your body. This is where the magic begins. Now, after fermentation comes the critical fork in the road. Some manufacturers take these fermented beans and process them as little as possible. They might lightly roast them at low temperatures, then grind them into powder. This preserves most of those beneficial compounds we are after. Other manufacturers take a different route. They roast the beans at high temperatures, sometimes over 400 degrees Fahrenheit, then treat them with an alkaline solution to reduce acidity. This process, called Dutch processing or alkalization, creates the smooth, mild cocoa powder you find in most grocery stores. But here's the problem. It is a nutritional disaster. The high heat and alkaline treatment work together like a 1-2 punch, destroying flavonoids and polyphenols. Studies show that regular cocoa powder can lose 60 to 90% of these beneficial compounds compared to minimally processed cacao. So when I talk about fermented cacao versus cocoa, I am really talking about minimal processing versus heavy processing. Both start with fermented beans, but they end up as completely different products for your health. Let us talk about what those preserved compounds actually do for your body, especially if you are over 60. The star players are flavonoids, particularly a group called flavonols. These compounds have a remarkable ability to improve blood flow throughout your body. Better blood flow means more oxygen and nutrients reaching your muscles, and more efficient removal of waste products that cause soreness and stiffness. But here's something fascinating that researchers discovered recently. These flavonols do not just improve circulation in general, they seem to have a particular affinity for brain tissue. Studies with older adults show that regular consumption of high flavanol cacao can improve memory, processing speed, and what scientists call executive function. That is your ability to plan, focus, and multitask. Now, let us talk about your muscles. As we age, our muscles face a double challenge. They produce more inflammatory compounds, and they become less efficient at repairing damage from daily activities. The antioxidants in fermented cacao help on both fronts. They reduce inflammation at the cellular level, which means less chronic pain and stiffness. And they protect muscle cells from oxidative damage, which helps maintain strength and improves recovery after physical activity. I want to tell you about Susan, a 69-year-old retired teacher from Michigan. She had been dealing with morning stiffness in her knees and had trouble concentrating during her volunteer work at the library. Her doctor suggested she try adding antioxidant-rich foods to her diet. Susan started with regular cocoa powder in her morning coffee, thinking all cacao products were the same. After 6 weeks, she noticed maybe a slight improvement, but nothing dramatic. Then she learned about the difference between processed cocoa and raw cacao powder. She switched to a high-quality fermented cacao powder, using 1 tablespoon in her coffee each morning. Within 3 weeks, she told me she felt like someone had oiled her knee joints. The morning stiffness was significantly reduced, and she found herself volunteering for longer shifts because her mental clarity had improved. Now, I cannot promise you will have identical results, but Susan's experience aligns with what we see in clinical studies. The key is using cacao that actually contains meaningful levels of those beneficial compounds. Speaking of which, let me share some brands that consistently test high for flavanol content. Wildly organic fermented cacao powder is cold processed and maintains high antioxidant levels. Navitas Organics cacao powder is another reliable option that clearly labels their minimal processing methods. Terrasoul Superfoods offers a cacao powder that is both organic and fair trade, with third-party testing for purity. The common thread among these brands is transparency. They tell you exactly how their cacao is processed, and many provide lab results showing flavanol content. This is not standard practice in the industry, so when you see it, pay attention. But here's a crucial detail that most people miss entirely. The way you consume cacao can dramatically affect how much benefit you actually get. More on that in just a moment. Now let us examine what happens with conventional cocoa processing and why it matters for your health goals. Remember that alkalization process I mentioned? Food scientists developed it in the 1800s to solve a real problem. Natural cacao is quite acidic and can be bitter and hard to dissolve in liquids. The alkaline treatment neutralizes that acidity, creating a powder that mixes easily and has a milder, more universally appealing flavor. From a culinary standpoint, this was brilliant. It made chocolate products more accessible and helped create the massive cocoa industry we know today. But from a nutritional standpoint, it is a tragedy. The alkaline environment does not just neutralize acids. It fundamentally changes the structure of flavonoids and polyphenols, often breaking them apart or converting them into forms your body cannot use effectively. Think of it like this. Imagine you have a key that perfectly fits a lock. The alkalization process is like taking that key and filing down its ridges. It might still look like a key, but it will not open the lock anymore. The flavonoids in heavily processed cocoa might still be detectable in laboratory tests, but they have lost much of their biological activity. There is another problem with most commercial cocoa products that compounds this issue. They are loaded with added sugars. A typical hot cocoa mix might contain more sugar than cacao by weight. This is not just empty calories. The sugar actually interferes with the absorption and utilization of any remaining beneficial compounds. When you consume sugar along with flavonoids, your body prioritizes processing the sugar. The flavonoids may pass through your system without being properly absorbed. It is like trying to have a conversation at a rock concert. The beneficial compounds are still there, but they are drowned out by the metabolic noise from sugar processing. So when you choose regular cocoa, especially sweetened varieties, you are getting a product that started with the same fermented beans as high-quality cacao powder, but has been stripped of most benefits and loaded with ingredients that actively work against your health goals. This is why that morning cocoa routine might not be giving you the results you expected. You are going through the motions, but you're not getting the medicine. Let me put this in terms that make the choice crystal clear. High-quality fermented cacao powder typically contains 300 to 700 milligrams of flavanols per ounce. That is enough to produce measurable improvements in blood flow within 2 hours of consumption. Regular alkalized cocoa powder contains 50 to 150 milligrams of flavanols per ounce. That is below the threshold where most people experience noticeable benefits. But the numbers only tell part of the story. The remaining flavanols in processed cocoa are often in forms that your body struggles to absorb and use effectively. Here is an analogy that might help. Imagine you're trying to water your garden with a hose. High-quality cacao is like having full water pressure flowing through an unrestricted hose. Regular cocoa is like the same hose with multiple kinks and a partially blocked nozzle. Some water gets through, but not enough to do the job effectively. The real-world impact of this difference shows up in how you feel and function daily. One protects your muscles, supports your joints, sharpens your memory, and helps maintain your independence. The other is essentially expensive chocolate powder with minimal health benefits. I know this might sound harsh, especially if you have been religiously adding cocoa to your morning routine thinking you were doing something great for your health. But I would rather give you information that helps you make better choices than let you continue wasting money and missing out on real benefits. The good news is that switching to high-quality cacao is simple, and the benefits can be noticeable relatively quickly. Now that you understand the difference, let us talk about how to use fermented cacao powder effectively. The sweet spot for most people is 1 tablespoon of high-quality cacao powder per day. That provides roughly 400 to 600 milligrams of flavanols, which falls within the range shown to be beneficial in clinical studies. The timing matters too. Consuming cacao with your morning coffee is not just about convenience. The combination of caffeine and flavanols creates a synergistic effect that enhances both mental clarity and physical energy. The caffeine helps with immediate alertness, while the flavanols support sustained cognitive function and circulation throughout the day. But here is a little-known trick that can amplify the benefits even further. Adding a pinch of Ceylon cinnamon or turmeric to your cacao coffee creates what researchers call a polyphenol network effect. These spices contain their own beneficial compounds that work together with cacao flavanols to reduce inflammation more effectively than any single ingredient alone. Ceylon cinnamon, in particular, has compounds that help regulate blood sugar, which can enhance the absorption of cacao flavanols. Turmeric contains curcumin, which has powerful anti-inflammatory effects that complement those found in cacao. Here is my recommended morning blend. 1 cup of coffee, 1 tablespoon of high-quality fermented cacao powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon, and just a pinch of turmeric. Mix it well, and you have created a powerful anti-aging elixir that tastes surprisingly good. Some people worry about the caffeine content when combining coffee and cacao. While cacao does contain some caffeine, it is much less than coffee. A tablespoon of cacao powder contains about 12 milligrams of caffeine, compared to 95 milligrams in a typical cup of coffee. The bigger concern is usually the theobromine in cacao, which can be stimulating for some people, especially if consumed later in the day. If you are sensitive to stimulants, try this combination in the morning only and see how you respond. Some people find that the sustained energy from cacao actually helps them avoid the afternoon crash they might experience with coffee alone. Now, here is something important about sourcing and storage. Cacao powder is sensitive to light, heat, and moisture. Always buy from suppliers who store their products properly. Keep your cacao powder in a cool, dark place in an airtight container. Properly stored, high-quality cacao powder maintains its potency for up to 2 years. Also, be careful about what you add to your cacao drink. While a small amount of natural sweetener like honey or maple syrup will not completely negate the benefits, large amounts of sugar can interfere with flavonoid absorption. If you need to sweeten your drink, start with just a 1/2 teaspoon of natural sweetener and gradually reduce it as your taste buds adapt to the richer, more complex flavor of real cacao. Let me be more specific about what to look for when shopping for cacao powder because the marketing can be confusing. First, ignore terms like superfood or raw on the label. These are not regulated terms and do not guarantee quality. Instead, look for specific processing information. The best products will explicitly state that they are cold processed, minimally processed, or processed below specific temperatures, usually under 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Wildly organic. Fermented cacao powder is one of the most consistent brands I have found. They clearly state their processing methods, and their powder has a rich, complex flavor that indicates high levels of preserved compounds. They also provide third-party testing results for heavy metals and other contaminants, which is crucial for any product you're consuming daily. Navitas Organics offers several cacao products, but their standard cacao powder is the one to choose for health benefits. It is organic, minimally processed, and they are transparent about their sourcing practices. The company has been around long enough to have established reliable supply chains with farmers who understand the importance of proper fermentation. Terrasoul Superfoods. Cacao powder is another solid choice. They work directly with farming cooperatives and maintain strict quality control throughout the process. Their powder tends to have a slightly more bitter flavor than some brands, which actually indicates higher levels of beneficial compounds. For those who prefer to shop locally, many health food stores carry bulk cacao powder. The key is asking about the source and processing methods. If the staff cannot answer basic questions about how the cacao was processed, that is usually a red flag. Price can be a rough indicator of quality, but it is not foolproof. High-quality cacao powder typically costs between $15 and $25 per pound. If you find cacao powder for much less than that, it is probably heavily processed. If it costs significantly more, you might be paying for premium packaging rather than superior quality. One more thing about sourcing. Fair trade and organic certifications are not just about ethics, although those matter too. Farms that meet these standards typically have better fermentation and drying practices, which directly impacts the nutritional quality of the final product. Let me paint a picture of what incorporating high-quality cacao into your routine might look like and feel like over time. In the first week, you might notice improved energy levels that feel different from caffeine alone. It is more sustained without the sharp peak and crash cycle. Some people describe it as feeling more alert without being jittery. By the second or third week, you might start noticing improvements in physical comfort. Morning stiffness may diminish. Activities that used to leave you feeling drained might become more manageable. This is likely due to the anti-inflammatory effects and improved circulation. After about a month of consistent use, the cognitive benefits often become more apparent. You might find it easier to focus during activities like reading or working on projects. Memory recall may improve, particularly for recent events and new information. The key word here is consistent. These are not dramatic overnight changes, but gradual improvements that compound over time. Think of it like physical exercise. One session will not transform your fitness, but consistent daily activity creates meaningful changes over weeks and months. I want to share another story, this one about Michael, a 72-year-old retired engineer from Arizona. He had been struggling with what he called brain fog since retiring. He felt less sharp than he used to, and simple tasks seemed to require more mental effort. Michael started adding a tablespoon of high-quality cacao powder to his morning coffee, along with a sprinkle of cinnamon. He chose this routine because it was simple, and he already had a coffee habit. After 6 weeks, Michael told me he felt like someone had cleaned the windows in his mind. His thinking felt clearer, and he found himself taking on projects he had been putting off. He even returned to doing complex engineering calculations as a hobby, something he had avoided because it felt too difficult. Now, Michael's experience is encouraging, but I want to be realistic about expectations. Not everyone will have such dramatic results, and individual responses can vary based on factors like overall diet, exercise habits, sleep quality, and genetics. But what the research consistently shows is that people who consume adequate amounts of high-quality cacao flavanols experience measurable improvements in circulation, cognitive function, and markers of inflammation. These improvements translate into real-world benefits for daily activities and long-term health. Let me share some pitfalls I have seen people fall into when trying to add cacao to their health routine. The biggest mistake is assuming all cacao products are equivalent. I have met people who switched from coffee to hot chocolate, thinking they were making a healthy choice, not realizing that commercial hot chocolate mixes contain mostly sugar with minimal beneficial compounds. Another common error is inconsistency. Some people use cacao powder sporadically, maybe a few times a week. They wonder why they do not notice benefits. The compounds in cacao work cumulatively. You need consistent daily intake to build up tissue levels and experience the full effects. Dosage confusion is also frequent. Some people think more is always better and start with large amounts, which can cause digestive upset or make them feel overstimulated. Others use too little, perhaps half a teaspoon per day, which is below the threshold for meaningful benefits. Storage mistakes can also undermine your investment. I have seen people leave their expensive cacao powder in sunny kitchen windowsills or hot pantries, then wonder why it loses its potency quickly. Light and heat are the enemies of these delicate compounds. Finally, there's the expectation trap. Some people expect immediate dramatic results and give up after a week or two when they do not feel transformed. Real health benefits from nutritional interventions usually unfold over weeks to months, not days. I want to share some specific research that might help you understand why cacao can be so beneficial for people over 60. A study published in the journal Nutrients followed adults aged 65 and older who consumed high flavanol cacao for 8 weeks. The researchers found significant improvements in what is called flow-mediated dilation, which is a measure of how well blood vessels can expand and contract. Better vascular function means improved circulation to muscles, joints, and brain tissue. Another study, this one in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, looked specifically at cognitive effects. Older adults who consumed cacao high in flavanols for 3 months showed improvements in memory tests and had increased activity in brain regions associated with learning and attention. Perhaps most interesting for our discussion is research on muscle function. A study in the Journal of Nutritional Biochemistry found that the antioxidants in cacao helped preserve muscle mass and strength in aging laboratory models. While human studies are still ongoing, the mechanism appears to involve protection of muscle cells from inflammatory damage and improved nutrient delivery through better circulation. The inflammation research is particularly compelling. Chronic, low-level inflammation is now recognized as a major driver of age-related health problems, including muscle loss, joint pain, and cognitive decline. Cacao flavanols appear to interrupt inflammatory pathways at the cellular level, potentially slowing down these aging processes. But here is what I find most encouraging about this research. The benefits are not limited to people who are already healthy. Studies have shown positive effects even in people with existing cardiovascular issues, diabetes, or cognitive concerns. This suggests that it is never too late to start supporting your body with these compounds. If you have made it this far, you are probably wondering how to put this information into action. Let me give you a practical roadmap. Start simple. Choose one high-quality cacao powder from the brands I mentioned. Begin with 1 tablespoon in your morning coffee or a warm milk of your choice. Give this routine at least 4 weeks before evaluating results. Keep a simple journal during this time. Note your energy levels, any changes in physical comfort, and how clearly you feel you are thinking. Do not expect dramatic day-to-day changes, but look for gradual trends over weeks. After a month, if you are noticing benefits, consider adding the cinnamon or turmeric enhancement I mentioned. These can amplify the anti-inflammatory effects and add interesting flavors to your morning routine. If you do not notice changes after 6 weeks, consider whether you are using enough high-quality product consistently, or whether other factors in your diet or lifestyle might be interfering with absorption and utilization. Remember that cacao is just one piece of a healthy aging strategy. It works best when combined with other supportive practices like regular movement, quality sleep, stress management, and a diet rich in vegetables and healthy proteins. But do not underestimate the power of this simple daily practice. Small, consistent actions often create the most sustainable and meaningful health improvements. Here's what I want you to remember from everything we have covered today. If you are over 60, every nutritional choice you make matters more than it did when you were younger. Your body has accumulated decades of wear and tear, and it needs more support to function optimally. Fermented cacao, when properly processed and consistently consumed, provides that support in multiple ways. It protects your cardiovascular system, supports your brain health, helps manage inflammation, and may even help preserve muscle mass and function. Regular cocoa, despite coming from the same fermented beans, has been processed in ways that strip away most of these benefits. It is not that it is harmful, but it is a missed opportunity. When you choose processed cocoa over high-quality cacao, you are settling for chocolate flavor without the medicine. The choice is yours, but now you have the information to choose wisely. 1 tablespoon of the right product each day could be a simple but powerful investment in your strength, memory, and independence. Here is my challenge for you. For the next 30 days, replace whatever chocolate or cocoa product you are currently using with 1 tablespoon of high-quality fermented cacao powder in your morning routine. Pay attention to how you feel, how you move, and how clearly you think. I have a feeling you will be surprised by the results. Before you go, I want to know, have you been using cacao or cocoa in your coffee? Tell me in the comments what you have been using and whether you're planning to make any changes based on what you learned today. And if you want to know about the #1 ingredient that can help rebuild muscle mass fast after 60, something that works even better when combined with cacao, make sure to watch the next video I have prepared for you. Thank you for investing this time in your health. Remember, growing older does not mean growing weaker. With the right knowledge and simple daily practices, you can maintain your strength, energy, and independence for years to come. If you want more tips, grab our ebook and turn your morning coffee into a fountain of youth with 5 simple ingredients that fight muscle loss, joint pain, and fatigue after 60.